Let's talk about this Lady and the Tramp remake that is on Disney+. I know I didn't talk about Maleficent 2 because I didn't really want to see it, and also October was kind of a bust for me as far as videos go. But this is the next major live-action adaptation from Disney of one of their animated properties. And if you don't count Maleficent 2, it's the fourth one this year. However, I think it's probably the least offensive out of the live-action remakes this year, and probably of all of them. Except for maybe Pete's Dragon, I think. I know that people like The Jungle Book and Beauty and the Beast and some of the other ones, but I personally haven't really enjoyed many of them at all. This one, however, I was starting to get into a little bit, but then it started dragging. One major problem that I have with the live-action adaptations is that they try to extend things to make them longer movies, when they don't really need to. Lady and the Tramp really doesn't need to be an hour and 44 minutes. The original is 30 minutes less than that and is a more concise movie. And I'm not even that big of a fan of the original. It's one of the Disney movies I always forget when I'm thinking of Disney movies in the 50s. I always think Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, what's that other one? Oh yeah, Lady and the Tramp. So it probably does help that I didn't really have that much of an attachment to the original when viewing this remake. But that doesn't excuse its scenes from dragging on and feeling like it's wasting my time. There are so many points in the movie where I'm thinking, just get to the point. As far as the animation on the dogs and the animals in the movie, they're okay, but sometimes it looks a little stiff. Like, I don't know if they're using like a puppet or something and having CG on top of that. And I know they did use real dogs for some of the scenes, where some of the scenes it seems very obvious it's CG, but then there's some scenes where it's like, oh yeah, they're training a dog to go along and walk this way. The cats they replaced for the Siamese cats, replacing that scene and replacing that song, look very weird though. Like, you can obviously tell they're CG cats. I did have a couple of chuckles in this movie, and that's mainly because of the awkward dialogue sometimes. And a character I actually enjoyed because of his silliness and the way he acted was the dog catcher. There's a conversation he has with Jim Deer where he's talking about catching the tramp, and like Jim Deer just looks at him like, well, thank you for that, whatever that was, and he just turns around. It was great. It's so weird and awkward, I just couldn't help but like burst out laughing at it. The movie does suffer a bit from the same problem that the Lion King remake suffers from, and that's sort of emotionless CG characters. They do look slightly better here, mainly because we're all very familiar with dogs compared to wild animals in Africa, so we're very familiar with some of their behaviors. But a lot of the dialogue and the conversations between Lady and Tramp just don't really stick that well. Lady and the Tramp is supposed to be a romance, but since it's in live action this time, it's kinda awkward, especially the scene next to the Italian restaurant. They even acknowledge that it's awkward and weird because they have like people staring out saying like, what's going on? That scene works in something like animation because in animation, anything can happen, but in live action it's like, what the heck are you doing? The movie does go pretty beat by beat with the original story, it's just dragged out to an extra 30 minutes. I do think that if Disney Plus wasn't a thing, and that if streaming services weren't a thing in general, then they probably would have released this in theaters. But they already released 3 other live-action remakes this year, so I guess they just wanted to put it on this so they wouldn't be crowding the year too much. I fully expect if they do something like remake Fox and the Hound, they'll probably put it on Disney Plus. So those are my thoughts on Lady and the Tramp. If you have seen it, tell me down in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, by now we're getting a bit used to winter. We're like soldiers in the middle of a campaign, growing hardened to discomfort and better able to take it.